Hair today.
Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are finishing off our journey into the world of Doctor Faustus. Text A, we're doing the A text, with all its original quirks and a lack of scene ordering in certain cases, which was actually a fun exercise. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but I found it actually quite interesting. I don't know if anyone else agrees. They probably don't. If you want to know the story of Dr. Faustus, go the internet, Google. It's everywhere. It's fine. If you want to know a little bit about it, more so about the story so far as we've reached it in the play, we have a previous video where we did lots of stuff. We're about 2/3 of the way through the play now, and later in this session we're also going to be segueing into the world of the Merry Devil of Edmonton, and you may find some interesting things to compare and contrast with there. We are, however, chorus with this exciting selection of people who are going to help read through the plays, reading Faustus, and later on in Merry Devil, reading Fabel is...
Aliki Chapple. Hi, I'm a Greek writer, actor, translator, and theatre maker based in the north of England.
And reading Mephistophilis today, and also Coreb and Raymond is...
Hello, Dan, actor based in Montpellier, France.
And reading second scholar and Blague. We haven't decided yet. The host is...
Liza Graham, actor, singer, and general waffler about stuff, London.
And reading Duchess, and later on in Merry Devil, Harry is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Longstaffe.
And reading the Horse Courser, the prologue to Merry Devil, and altogether now, Bilbo is...
Longstaffe, scholar of early modern drama based in Lancaster in the UK.
And reading first scholar and Sir Ralph is...
Hi, I'm Valentina, and I am an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading the Duke and Sir Arthur is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Utah.
And reading Wagner, Millicent, and Sir John today is...
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm an actor. I am usually in London, currently in exile in Germany, and a general geek.
And reading Old Man, Chorus, Sir Richard, and Smug is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian, and last night I was diabolically translated by a demon called Azuma to Hull.
Not hell. Definitely not hell. To Hull. Everyone can relax. It's fine. And reading first scholar and Sir Ralph is...
You've already introduced me, but
have I already introduced you? Who have I missed? Third scholar. They're very similar. Third scholar, Lady Dorcas and Banks is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director in Germany.
And also we have a guest with us today. Alexandra, just introduce yourself.
My name is Alexandra, and today I am purely ornamental.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton, and I'll be trying to move us relatively swiftly on as we complete this play and move into the next. You know, this is a play that has reputation and modern history, and also quite a reputation at its own time. Some of it spurious, like the account by William Prynne of the visible apparition of the devil on stage at the Bell Savage Playhouse in Queen Elizabeth's days, to the great amazement both of the actors and spectators, while they were profanely playing the history of Faustus, the truth of which I have heard from many now alive, and who well remember it, there being some distracted with that fearful sight. So some people weren't desperately impressed. And if you were in Exeter at one performance, there was a belief or a story that, in fact, there was an extra devil on stage during one of the performances, and everybody left with some speed after that. And all the actors, instead of staying up drinking, stayed up praying that night. So
I don't believe that.
I don't believe that for a second either. But this is a play that accumulates all sorts of interesting little gobbets of alleged things. It has a performance history that goes on for many decades. It sort of disappears and comes back with a flourish. It survives into the Restoration. It is everywhere. And to get a little further into that everywhere, we are rejoining the text from where Faustus has just said fare thee well to the Emperor, having just played a bit of a practical joke on someone by adding some horns onto their heads. And he and Mephistophilis are now alone.
Now, Mephistophilis, the restless course that time doth run with calm and silent foot, shortening my days and thread of vital life, calls for the payment of my latest years. Therefore, sweet Mephistophilis, let us make haste to Wertenberg.
What? Will you go on horseback or on foot?
Nay, till I'm past this fair and pleasant green, I'll walk on foot.
And here enter a horse courser.
In all this day seeking one Master Fustian. Master, see where he is. God save you, Master Doctor.
Oh, what horse courser? You are well met.
Do you hear, sir? I have brought you $40 for your horse.
I cannot sell him so. If thou likest him for 50, take him.
Alas, sir, I have no more. I pray you, speak for me.
I pray you, let him have him. He is an honest fellow, and he has a good charge, neither wife nor child.
Well, come, give me your money. My boy will deliver him to you, but I must tell you one thing before you have him. Ride him not into the water at any hand.
Why, sir, will he not drink of all waters?
Oh, yes, he will drink of all waters, but ride him not into the water. Ride him over hedge or ditch or where thou wilt, but not into the water.
Well, sir, now I am made man forever. I'll not leave my horse for 40 if he had but the quality of I'd make a brave living on it. He has a buttock as slack as an eel. Well, and God be with you, sir. Your boy will deliver him me. But hark you, sir, if my horse, be sick or ill at ease, if I bring his water to you, you tell me what it is.
Away, you villain! What, dost think I am a horse doctor?
And indeed exit the horse courser.
What art thou, Faustus, but a man condemned to die? Thy fatal time doth draw to final end. Despair doth drive distrust into my thoughts. Confound these passions with a quiet sleep. Tush! Christ did call the thief upon the cross. Unrest thee, Faustus, quiet and conceit.
And Faustus sleeps in his chair. Re-enter horse courser, all wet, crying.
Alas, Dr. Fustian, quotha! Dr. Lopez was never such a doctor. He's given me a purgation. He's purged me of $40. I shall never see them more. Yet, like an ass as I was, I would not be ruled by him, for he bade me I should ride him into no water. But now I, thinking my horse had some rare quality that he would not have me know of, I, like a venturous youth, rid him into a deep pond at the town's end. I was no sooner in the middle of the pond than my horse vanished away. I sat upon a bottle of hay, never so near drowning in my life. I'll seek out the doctor. I'll have my $40 again, or I'll make it the dearest horse. Well, yonder is his snipper snapper. Do you hear? Oi! Hey, pass! Where's your master?
Why, sir, what would you? You cannot speak with him.
But I will speak with him.
Why, he's fast asleep. Come some other time.
I'll speak with him now, or I'll break his glass windows about his ears.
I tell thee, he has not slept this 8 nights.
And he have not slept this 8 weeks. I'll speak with him.
See where he is? Fast asleep.
This is he. God save you, Master Doctor. Master Doctor Fustian. $40? $40 for a bottle of hay?
Why, thou seest he hears thee not.
No? Will you not wake? I'll make you wake ere I go.
And he pulls Faustus by the leg and pulls it away.
Alas, I am undone. What shall I do?
Oh, my leg! My leg! Help! Mephistophilis, call the officers! My leg! My leg!
Come, villain, to the constable.
Sir, let me go. I'll give you $40 more.
Where be they?
Well, I've none about me. Come to my ostry, I'll give them you.
Be gone quickly.
And the horse courser runs away.
Why is he gone? Farewell he. Faustus has his leg again. And the horse courser, I take it, a bottle of hay for his labour. Well, this trick shall cost him $40 more.
And enter Wagner.
How now, Wagner? What's the news with thee?
Sir, the Duke of Vanholt doth earnestly entreat your company.
The Duke of Vanholt? An honourable gentleman, to whom I must be no niggard of my cunning. Come, Mephistophilis, let us away to him.
And we'll just briefly pause there because it's a fun old little scene. I don't think it's the same company as Orlando Furioso, so I don't know if they're reusing the same random torn off leg. But there is clearly, by mentioning a chair, the indication is that that's a way of managing the substitution of a limb. There's some device going on there. It's sort of weird how the various, because we've just gone from a scene with other people in, and where we are and where they're going, what they're doing, and how this scene functions is sort of quite wibbly wobbly. Bit of a mention of Dr. Lopez, as who was purported to have plotted to have poisoned Queen Elizabeth and was hanged. It creates all sorts of interesting questions about dating because he was known before that unfortunate life cutting off incident. Thoughts about the scene?
Is it in all the text? Because I've got no memory of this scene.
I don't know if it's in... I'm assuming B-text is longer, but there may be scenes that are not in B-text. I'll have a quick little look while other people come up with things. Any other additional thoughts in the room? Tamara?
In here.
I find it interesting that this is what so they've gone from the Pope, the Emperor, to the horse courser in terms of mischief. And I find that weird because it feels like it's gone up, horse courser in terms of the people they are playing their mischief on. Is that just me, or?
I think it might be a fair point. B-text does have not only a much more expanded version of the whole Emperor horns on heads sequence, much more detailed Emperor's Court, but also has the horse courser. It seems pretty similar to me, just scanning at it. It doesn't look any different at all.
But B has more clowns, and that scene in the tavern where they all come to the Emperor's Court, to either the Emperor's Court or the Duke's Court, I forget which, and try and call him to account for his tricks.
So yeah, there are differences, but yeah. Sorry, Dan.
I was saying just the text is pretty substantially changed as well, that scene.
All right. Okay. Lovely. Sarah. Muted.
There we go. Going back to what Tamara said, I think the Pope would have been higher than the Emperor at this time. So it's actually a steep. It's a decline right down.
It's like they're going backwards.
They're going down, and again going from what I was saying yesterday, not during the recording, but afterwards. It's like I took this as a sign of his. It's his literal decline, like being reflected in the mischief. But I mean, that's just one way of looking at it.
But we've also got within the scene, these little speeches from Faustus going, if everything's winding down a bit, might go home, which is really interesting. Dan.
Just a quick note to add, there is a possibility that this Green sold Orlando Furioso to the Admiral's men. And we also do have the allusion to, or not the allusion, but once again, the devil dressing up as a woman, pretending to be someone's love, which we saw, of course, last week in John of Bordeaux. So Who knows? If they
So maybe it's the same leg.
Exactly. And the same cloak or same outfit to disguise.
Yeah, there's some really interesting work going on about transmission of props and transmission of materials within companies as well. That's not what we have time for today. Alexandra, any thoughts?
But even if it isn't the same props or the same tricks, it's interesting for us considering putting things on as you were talking about yesterday. If you wanted to do, for instance, a season of plays of this period, to choose things that do have quite notable similarities, whether or not they were intended, just because coincidence or people stealing from each other, still makes it really interesting and fun.
Mm. No, I think that's a really nice point, Dan.
And Orlando Furioso also has a clown dressing up as the love of Orlando in there as well. So the three would plays speak to each other in many ways.
Excellent. We need to move forward, however. So it's not quite all downhill station-wise, because they're visiting the Duke of Van Holt, the Duchess, and also Faustus now enters.
Believe me, Master Doctor, this merriment hath much pleased me.
My gracious lord, I am glad it contents you so well. But it may be, madam, you take no delight in this. I have heard that great-bellied women do long for some dainties or other. What is it, madam? Tell me, and you shall have it.
Thanks, good Master Doctor. And, for I see your courteous intent to pleasure me, I will not hide from you the thing my heart desires. And, were it now summer, as it is in January, and dead time of the winter, I will desire no better meat than a dish of ripe grapes.
Alas, madam, that's nothing. Mephistophilis, be gone.
Exit Mephistophilis.
Were it a greater thing than this, so it would content you, you should have it.
Re-enter Mephistophilis with a very high carbon footprint bunch of grapes.
Here they be, madam. Will it please you taste on them?
Believe me, Master Doctor, this makes me wonder above the rest, that being in the dead time of winter and in the month of January, how come you should come by these grapes?
If it like your grace, the year is divided into two circles over the whole world, that when it is here winter with us, in the contrary circle, it is summer with them, as in India, Saba, and further countries to the east. And by means of a swift spirit that I had them brought hither, as you see. How do you like them, madam? Be they good?
Believe me, Master Doctor, they be the best grapes that e'er I tasted in my life before.
I am glad they content you so, madam.
Come, madam, let us in, where you must well reward this learned man for the great kindness he hath showed to you.
And so I will, my lord, and, whilst I live, rest beholding for this courtesy.
I humbly thank your grace.
Come, Master Doctor, follow us and receive your reward.
And they exit. And now we have the entrance of Wagner for a brief speechette.
I think my master means to die shortly, for he hath given to me all his goods. And yet methinks if that death were near, he would not banquet and carouse and swill amongst the students even now he doth, who are at supper with such belly cheer as Wagner ne'er beheld in all his life. See where they come. Belike the feast is ended.
So he exits and enter Faustus with 2 or 3 scholars and Mephistophilis.
Master Doctor Faustus, since our conference about fair ladies, which was the beautifulest in all the world, we have determined with ourselves that Helen of Greece was the admirablest lady that ever lived. Therefore, Master Doctor, if you will do us that favour as to let us see that peerless dame of Greece, whom all the world admires for majesty, we should think ourselves much beholden unto you.
Gentlemen, for that I know your friendship is unfeigned, and Faustus' custom is not to deny the just requests of those that wish him well, you shall behold that peerless dame of Greece. No other ways for pomp and majesty than when Sir Paris crossed the seas with her and brought the spoils to rich Dardania. Be silent then, for danger is in words.
Music sounds, and Helen, performed today by Alexandra, passeth over the stage. Liza, I think, is second scholar.
I've struck everyone dumb with my amazingness.
Yeah, everyone's staggered. We're all staggered. We seem to have lost Liza.
Shall I be second scholar for the moment?
Yeah, for the moment, if you could.
Too simple is my wit to tell her praise, whom all the world admires for majesty.
No marvel, though, the angry Greeks pursued with 10 years' war the rape of such a queen, whose heavenly beauty passeth all compare.
Since we have seen the pride of nature's works and only paragon of excellence, let us depart, and for this glorious deed, happy and blessed be Faustus evermore.
Gentlemen, farewell. The same I wish to you.
Exit scholars and enter, maybe earlier, but around about here, an old man.
Ah, Doctor Faustus, that I might prevail to guide thy steps unto the way of life, by which the sweet part thou mayst attain the goal that shall conduct thee to celestial rest. Break heart, drop blood, and mingle it with tears, tears falling from repentant heaviness of thy most vile and loathsome filthiness, the stench whereof corrupts the inward soul with such flagitious crimes of heinous sin, as no commiseration may expel, but mercy, Faustus, of thy Saviour's sweet, whose blood alone must wash away thy guilt.
Where art thou, Faustus? Wretch, what hast thou done? Damned art thou, Faustus, damned. Despair and die. Hell calls for right, and with a roaring voice says, Faustus, come, thine hour is almost come, and Faustus now will come to do thee right.
Mephistophilis gives him a dagger.
Oh, stay, good Faustus, stay thy desperate steps. I see an angel hovers o'er thy head, and with a vial full of precious grace offers to pour the same into thy soul. Then call for mercy and avoid despair.
Ah, my sweet friend, I feel thy words to comfort my distressed soul. Leave me a while to ponder on my sins.
I go, sweet Faustus, but with heavy cheer, fearing the ruin of thy hopeless soul.
Exit the old man.
Accursed Faustus, where is mercy now? I do repent, yet I do despair. Hell strives with grace for conquest in my breast. What shall I do to shun the snares of death?
Thou traitor Faustus, I arrest thy soul for disobedience to my sovereign lord. Revolt, or I'll in piecemeal tear thy flesh.
Sweet Mephistophilis, entreat thy lord to pardon my unjust presumption, and with my blood, again, I will confirm my former vow I made to Lucifer.
Do it then quickly, with unfeigned heart, lest greater danger do attend thy drift.
Torment, sweet friend, that base and crooked age that durst dissuade me from thy Lucifer, with greatest torments that our hell affords.
His faith is great. I cannot touch his soul. But what I might afflict his body with, I will attempt, which is but little worth.
One thing, good servant, let me crave of thee, to glut the longing of my heart's desire, that I might have unto my paramour that heavenly Helen which I saw of late, whose sweet embracings may extinguish clean those thoughts that do dissuade me from my vow, and keep mine oath I made to Lucifer.
Faustus, this, or what else thou shalt desire, shall be performed in twinkling of an eye.
Re-enter Helen.
Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Sweet Helen, make me immortal with a kiss. Her lips suck forth my soul. See where it flies? Come, Helen, come give me my soul again. Here will I dwell, for heaven is in these lips, and all is dross that is not Helena. I will be Paris, and for love of thee, instead of Troy, shall Wertenberg be sacked. And I will combat with weak Menelaus, and wear thy colours on my plumed crest. Nay, I will wound Achilles in the heel, and then return to Helen for a kiss. Thou art fairer than the evening air, clad in the beauty of 1,000 stars. Brighter art thou than flaming Jupiter when he appeared to hapless Semele, more lovely than the monarch of the sky in wanton Arethusa's azured arms, and none shall be my paramour.
And he exits. Re-enter the old man.
Accursed Faustus, miserable man, that from thy soul excluded the grace of heaven, and flight the throne of his tribunal seat.
Enter devils.
Satan begins to sift me with his pride, and in this furnace God, this isn't
Faustus, it must be.
This isn't the old man.
Must be Faustus.
No, I think it's the old man.
It is the old man, dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
The devils are coming for him.
Okay. Me, I haven't done anything. Satan begins to sift me with his pride, and in this furnace God shall try my faith. My faith, vile hell, shall triumph over thee. Ambitious fiend, see how the heavens smile at your repulse, and laugh your state to scorn. Hence, hell, for hence I fly unto my God.
And exit devils pursuing old man escapes, perhaps not physically, but at least his soul will go up to heaven. It's a really interesting thing. Mephistophilis going, no, we can't touch his soul. We can give him a limp. Will that do? Bing, there we are. A bit of a limp on the old man. His soul's too much. His goodness is too much of a protection.
I mean, it's not a limp, is it? They've killed him.
Oh yeah. No, but they can't touch his soul. He's safe.
Yeah.
He's
Which
safe.
is why in the stage directions they exit on different sides, one to hell and one to heaven.
And it's another demonstration. Once again, we've got that slightly. So what's the first thing when you get a new piece of technology? Some people want to use it for porn, and that's basically what seems to be happening here. Let's. And it's the second time in the play that this has happened as well. We had them leching earlier and looking for a mole. They were looking for a little mole, weren't they, earlier? So, yeah, not dodgy at all. Thoughts.
We've had this from the very beginning with Faustus, where he's going, I don't want to be damned. I don't, and there he's at it again, and he's just going to be at it for the rest of the play, really. So there we go.
It's the fact that Mephistopheles does keep immediately turning up the moment he has any doubts. It's like, this bargain can break down if he's determined. So you use both fear and also carrot and stick is going on in this scene. Liza.
Well, this plays into the question of predestination versus free will that I was going on about yesterday. Is Faustus damned because he sins, or does he sin because he is foreordained to sin and be damned by God? And the play seems to make arguments for both. Earlier in his "When I behold the heavens, then I repent" speech, he went from "I repent" to "I shall repent" to "I cannot repent." And here, again, he wants to repent, and then he keeps being presented with reasons why he can't. But if he really did want to repent, he would disregard all human suffering like the old man does, and he would do so.
I'm not sure in terms of the dramaturgy that it's really pushing. He's doomed, predestined to be doomed. He's constantly being given choices, and he's constantly choosing. And he's been given carrot and stick each time by Mephistopheles. The drama of it seems to be playing with that choice each time.
Staging wise, I wonder if he's being shown some of the tortures, because Mephistophilis just says, "Oh, we'll tear your flesh," and suddenly he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, I'll do whatever you want."
And yes, and it's the way he sort of throws the old man under the bus. And is that out of fear, or is that out of genuinely he's been captured in his mind again? Sarah?
One thing I love about this play is the psychology of it, because he damns himself effectively. There's the whole thing of like, is it predestined? Is it his choice? But the fact is, it's predestined, even if it is his choice, because he simply doesn't believe that he can be saved. And he has these moments where, oh yes, I'll repent. But he doesn't stick with them, because he basically does not believe on some level that he can be saved. I mean, that's why that scene with the old man is so important, because that is showing the audience, as it were, the contemporary audience at the time, oh yes, you can be saved if you repent. But Faustus basically just doesn't believe that he can be. So yeah, there's always carrot and stick stuff going on, but it's like it's him self-sabotaging, really.
He gives into one hope, he gives into despair, and
he
you
does.
are pretty doomed at that point. Helen?
Exactly, yeah.
I agree entirely with what Sarah's saying, but I think I would like to add that Mephistophilis believes that Faustus can be saved.
Oh yeah, he does. He knows.
Which in fact informs the audience. I mean, you've got to, although the audience sees Faustus despairing, the audience also sees that Mephistophilis gives them hope.
And we've, it's also, we do have a suicide attempt that, turns up. And, it's very similar, because we did Magnificence a couple of weeks ago. And there's a similar sort of moment in that as well, where, someone's giving in to despair, they're going to kill themselves. And then suddenly, last minute, hope turns up, and they turn away from that. So the old man's sort of representing hope in that moment. Alexandra?
I wanted to point that out as well, this suggestion or indication towards suicide, because that would be the one way in which he can't be saved.
You can almost hear Mephistopheles going, "Go on, go for it, come on."
And it feels very, in the writing of it, it feels very, very intentional, and it's a moment that I very much like. Entirely unrelatedly, I would just like to point out how all the comparisons relating to beauty thus far have been have had as the object of comparison men, or male figures, just as a thing that Marlowe seems to do. So as beautiful as was bright Lucifer before his fall, and then just now he, faced with the most what we have established repeatedly as the most beautiful woman in that has ever been, Faustus compares her to flaming Jupiter and the monarch of the sky. So that's interesting.
Helen, I saw a hand.
Yeah, I was going back a bit. The scene with the Duke and Duchess, the way that opens, it felt to me that it was misplaced. It would have made more sense to have followed on from the court scene with the cuckold's horns. But then I was just trying to work out what was supposed to be going on in that scene. And is it almost a question of Faustus trying to do good? Because it's not a practical joke as he plays on the horse courser. It appears to be a straight beneficial act. And it just confused me as to where it sits in the play and in the trajectory of the storyline.
Is it not that he's currying favour? Because
he's showing off.
He's so kind of enfeebled.
Liza, we do need to wrap this up before we finish.
Quickly. I mean, its purpose within the play seems to be spectacle and lyricism. Now that we've just had clowns, before that we had the emperor with the buffoonery with the horns on the guy's head. So now we get spectacle, some music, some beauty, some lovely verse, and Helen of Troy.
Indeed. Apparently launched 1,000 ships. Though I don't think anyone did a full inventory, so the opinions may vary. Okay, we need to move forward. And we'll, in fact, close the play because I don't think there's any reason to stop during this sequence because it all heads in one direction. And you can take pretty much, I think, various... we'll go with it as it is. So enter Faustus with scholars.
Gentlemen.
Ails, Faustus.
My sweet chamber fellow, had I lived with thee, then had I lived still. Now I die eternally. Look, comes he not? Comes he not?
What means Faustus?
Belike he has grown into some sickness by being over solitary.
If it be so, we'll have physicians to cure him. 'Tis but a surfeit, never fear, men.
A surfeit of deadly sin that hath damned both body and soul.
Yet Faustus, look up to heaven. Remember God's mercies are infinite.
But Faustus' offence can ne'er be pardoned. The serpent that tempted Eve may be saved, but not Faustus. Gentlemen, hear me with patience, and tremble not at my speeches, though my heart pants and quivers to remember that I have been a student here these 30 years. Oh, would I had never seen Wittenberg, never read book, and what wonders I have done, all Germany can witness, yea, all the world, for which Faustus hath lost both Germany and the world, yea, heaven itself, heaven, the seat of God, the throne of the blessed, the kingdom of joy, and must remain in hell forever, hell forever. Sweet friends, what shall become of Faustus, being in hell forever?
Yet Faustus, call on God.
Oh God, whom Faustus hath abjured, on God, whom Faustus hath blasphemed. My God, I would weep, but the devil draws in my tears. Gush forth blood instead of tears, yea, life and soul. He stays my tongue. I would lift up my hands, but see, they hold them, they hold them.
Who, Faustus?
Lucifer and Mephistophilis, gentlemen. I gave them my soul for my cunning.
God forbid.
God forbid, indeed. But Faustus hath done it for vain pleasure of 24 years. Hath Faustus lost eternal joy and felicity. I writ them a bill with mine own blood. The date's expired, the time will come, and he will fetch me.
Why did not Faustus tell us of this before, that divines might have prayed for thee?
Oft have I thought to have done so, but the devil threatened to tear me in pieces if I named God, to fetch both body and soul, if I once gave ear to divinity. Now 'tis too late. Gentlemen, away, lest you perish with me.
Oh, what shall we do to save Faustus?
Talk not of me, but save yourselves and depart.
God will strengthen me. I will stay with Faustus.
Tempt not God, sweet friend, but let us into the next room, and there pray for him.
Aye, pray for me, and what noise soe'er ye hear, come not unto me, for nothing can rescue me.
Pray thou, and we will pray that God may have mercy upon thee.
Gentlemen, farewell. If I live till morning, I'll visit you. If not, Faustus is gone to hell.
Farewell.
Faustus, farewell.
Exit scholars. The clock strikes 11. I will not do all the chimes.
Faustus, now hast thou but one bare hour to live, and then thou must be damned perpetually. Stand still, you ever-moving spheres of heaven, the time may cease, and midnight never come. Fair nature's eye, rise, rise again, and make perpetual day, or let this hour be but a year, a month, a week, a natural day, that Faustus may repent and save his soul. Oh, lente, corrite noctis equi! The stars are still. Time runs. Clock will strike, the devil will come, and Faustus must be damned. Oh, I'll leap up to my God, who pulls me down. See, See where Christ's blood streams in the firmament. One drop would save my soul. Half a drop. Oh, my Christ! Rent not my heart for naming of my Christ. Yet I will call on him. Oh, spare me, Lucifer! Where is it now? It's gone. And see where God stretched out his arm and bends his ireful brows. Mountains and hills, come and fall on me and hide me from the heavy wrath of God! No! And I will run, headed into the earth. Earth, gape! Oh no, it will not harbor me. You stars that reigned at my nativity, whose influence hath allotted death and hell, now draw up, Faustus, like a foggy mist into the entrails of yon labouring clouds, that when you vomit forth the air, my limbs may issue from your smoky mouth, so that my soul may but ascend to heaven.
And the clock strikes half hour.
Half the hour is past. It won't be past in a moment. Oh God, if thou wilt not have mercy on my soul, yet for Christ's sake, whose blood hath ransomed me, impose some end to my incessant pain. Let Faustus live in hell 1,000 years, 100,000, and at last be saved? Oh, no end is limited to damned souls. Why wert thou not a creature wanting soul? Why is this immortal that thou hast? Pythagoras, Mephistophilis, were that true, this soul should fly from me, and I be changed into some brutish beast. All beasts are happy, for when they die, their souls are soon dissolved in elements, but mine must live still to be plagued in hell. Cursed be the parents that engendered me. No, Faustus, curse thyself, curse Lucifer, that hath deprived me of the joys of heaven.
And the clock strikes 12.
Oh, it strikes! It strikes! Now body turn to air, or Lucifer will bear thee quick to hell!
Thunder and lightning.
Oh, soul, be changed into little water drops and fall into the ocean, ne'er be found.
Enter devils.
Oh, God, my God, look not so fierce on me. Adders and serpents, let me breathe a while. Ugly hell, gape not. Come not, Lucifer. I'll burn my books. Stop me.
Exeunt devils with Faustus enter chorus.
Cut is the branch that might have grown full straight, and Bernard is Apollo's laurel bough that sometime grew within this learned man. Faustus is gone. Regard his hellish fall, whose fiendful fortune may exhort the wise, only to wonder at unlawful things, whose deepness doth entice such forward wits to practice more than heavenly power permits.
And exit chorus, and thus ends the play. So all ended happily ever after. I love the first scholar. Pray, attempt not God, sweet friend. Let us into the next room and there pray for him. You know, it's go. I'd like to pray for him. Could we do it at a distance, please? You know, basic health and safety procedures here. That would be fab.
Insufficient PPE?
Well, yeah, it's also the third scholar's line is grown into some sickness by being over solitary. There's a potential other reading of that one. Final thoughts.
It's entirely the fault of whoever brought up Tolkien, an author I loathe. I couldn't help thinking Gollum.
Technically, Bilbo's not till the next play we're reading, but yeah, okay, yes. For whom?
The Faustus, the last great speech. All the time I was thinking of poor old Gollum.
Well, the comparison may be apt, you know. Faustus reached for supreme power and it destroyed him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now he is engulfed by fire.
But both are based on myths or legends of much greater antiquity anyway. You know, the hubris thing, you know, has been explored for millennia.
And it's you know, and the play is quite neat mirroring. You know, we've gone from the opening, which is this long speech from Faustus, and it closes with this long speech of Faustus. It's using the sound effects of the clock very effectively, and then presumably whatever budget's left over for some spectacular demon effects at the end there. You know, in a modern theatre, this is where you produce a gaping hit. Entry into hell and you know, and flames, and you know, you go all out if you want to.
But I was thinking that isn't necessary.
Oh, it's not necessary. It's just what we do.
Yes, well, maybe, but in fact, if you look at the speech, if you take out the devils and you take out Mephistophilis and you just have Faustus dying in the knowledge that he's damned, it has moments where that's even worse than lots of pretend devils with squibs.
If it's all in his head, you know, and he just scares himself to death and goes to hell. Sarah?
Well, that would be his Mephistopheles' words coming true, wouldn't it? Because hell is where you are. If you know, if you believe yourself to be there, then hell is where you are. Yeah.
The B text has actual stage directions for the throne of God to descend, and then for hell to be discovered. So there were SFX. There were special effects, or at least special effects intended in this scene. It's also, again, an interesting parallel that, in Faustus's first speech, he has infinite choices, and he can't decide, and none of them satisfies him except magic, so he chooses that. But he has infinite choices before that. And in this speech, he has no choice at all. There's only one path, and he, theoretically, I suppose he could still choose to repent. But there's also a flesh versus spirit thing where he's afraid of pain, as are we all. It's very relatable.
He's going from having, you know, that he's got the Netflix pass. You know, he can't choose what he's going to watch. And he's trapped in this cycle at the beginning.
And again, the predestination versus free will thing in the final chorus, just this one quick point, that cut is the branch that might have grown full straight. So again, there's a suggestion that Faustus didn't need to be damned. But then, you know, who gave him the intelligence, who tempted him to overreach the bounds of what is permitted to man in his study? Again, there's the B text has a little more on this, but we'll see that when we get to it.
Elizabeth, I saw a hand.
Yes, I was thinking about the redemption of Faustus' soul, and how even though throughout the narrative it's obvious which way he's going, there's this opportunity for him to be redeemed. And even towards the very end, the final hour, they have that opportunity for him to be redeemed by Christ, and he doesn't take it. It's almost as though he prefers to be dragged to hell.
Stephen?
It reminded me very much of, and I wonder if it would have resonated with an audience. There's in the York cycle, there's a play called The Remorse of Judas, and the most immediate kind of cultural reference perhaps might be Judas. He's in a kind of similar pickle, really, because it kind of has to happen, doesn't it? And the whole play is leading up to Judas's suicide. He eventually kills himself, and there's a sort of theological get out there where it's not actually participating in the damning of Jesus, because that's all kind of foretold and in a sense predestined. It's the despair. So I was wondering if there are kind of cultural layers to this thinking about despair that to a differently literate audience, if you like. And the other point would be, cut is the branch that might have grown full straight. he's cold, isn't it? It's kind of, it's kind of just a bit of pruning, if you like. The kind of sort of resonances of that as a metaphor. And I wonder if, the kind of, I sort of said this yesterday, didn't I? But the chorus supposed to wrap it all up. But if the players worked, then the chorus can't do what the chorus says it's doing. Because if there's a sense in which we are kind of responding to it wrong if we go, yeah, oh God, I couldn't just, why did he take an hour? Couldn't we just sort of see him being, down, get on and get the lesson out of it?
It's that thing. Cut is about that. Might have gone straight if he'd just chosen a different module in his, as a secondary, when he started. It might have gone a totally different way. Could have gone very different direction. Any final thoughts? I'm not going to go around the whole room, but before we move into the next place, start getting your merry devils out, as it were. Otherwise, viewers at home, be glad you're not looking at what the chat is producing at the moment. It's just. I'm disappointed nobody's saying this stuff out loud, but I think it's gone too far now for anyone. You're missing out. Your FOMO is. I've just activated that. I'm very sorry for triggering a FOMO.
Just play bow rap.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts on Faustus before we move on to the next play? No, everyone's sort of Faustus out. I'll throw in. There's very rarely a play where you don't go, oh, there's a little bit of Everyman in that, but there's very much a bit of Everyman in this. In the Summoning of Everyman, once he's met death, Everyman has this wonderful speech where he talks about, I'm going to die, who's going to save me, what am I going to do? And, he calls out, I would to God I had never beget. And then the time passeth. He says that, Lord, help all that wrought, and the day passeth and is almost gone. It's the same game with the clock that we have here, and it's another one of those lovely resonances where we're going. Marlowe and Nash might have, if it is Nash or others, might have picked up on that, even as a mini resonance. Okay, we're now Dan. Do you have a final thought before we segue?
Yeah, just the final thing about the idea of him being predestined. I think that what you're saying is absolutely right about every man and whatnot. I mean, it is essentially morality. It's not a tragedy if he doesn't have a choice. I feel like I think it's even the idea of Wagner. We were talking about this earlier about Wagner or the chorus having that speech. I feel like that's the human element of what Wagner is speaking for the audience there. What choices does Faustus really have there, as opposed to this chorus that maybe we are not relating to as much. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alexandra.
Alexandra, yeah.
I just wanted to second that. I think whatever the play might have been intended to show at the time, what makes it interesting in a contemporary context is the fact that he has choices. If everything just happens to him, that makes for a boring story because it has a protagonist with no agency. Whereas if we see it as a person who makes choices and they are either the wrong choices or no choice would be right, he'd have to either give up on his quest for knowledge or power or whatever it is that he wants to get, or he'd have to give up on his eternal salvation. That makes for a much more interesting internal conflict and therefore thing for us to watch. And I think that's what makes this play still be resonant or still be interesting nowadays, why it's one of the few that actually do get produced, is that we've got options and alternatives for character interpretations, both for Faustus and for Mephistophilis.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop you because we need to move forward. I'm very sorry. If that's okay. There's lots always more to unpack with Faustus, and at some point we'll be looking at the B text, so there will be more. There will be more at some point. Probably not for a while, but at some point there will be more Faustus. But we do have to move on to the Merry Devil of Edmonton. It's a later play, but Faustus is a play that keeps hanging around. So the influences will perhaps be quite apparent. So it's acted perhaps initially in the early 17th century. We have dipped a little bit of forward in time, so somewhere 1601, 2, 3, 4, somewhere around there. And it's performed in one of the printings. It has, as it have been sundry times, acted by His Majesty's servants at the Globe on Bankside. So, you know, that we're in a slightly different universe of playmaking than we've been mostly immersing ourselves in these afternoon sessions. So we're going to leap into the action of the Merry Devil of Edmonton and author unknown, and we're going to possibly recognise where we are. So enter prologue, please.
Your silence and attention, worthy friends, that your free spirits may with more pleasing sense relish the life of this our active scene. To which intent, to calm this murmuring breath, we ring this round with our invoking spells. If that your listening ears be yet prepared to entertain the subject of our play, lend us your patience. 'Tis Peter Fabel, a renowned scholar whose fame hath still been hitherto forgot by all the writers of this latter age. In Middlesex, his birth and his abode, not full 7 miles from this great famous city, that for his fame in sleights and magic won was called the Merry Fiend of Edmonton. If any here make doubt of such a name, in Edmonton yet, fresh unto this day, fixed in the wall of that old ancient church, his monument remaineth to be seen. His memory yet in the mouths of men, that whilst he lived, he could deceive the devil. Imagine now that whilst he is retired from Cambridge back into his native home, suppose the silent sable-visaged night casts a black curtain over all the world, and whilst he sleeps within his silent bed, toiled with the studies of the passed day, the very time and hour wherein that spirit that many years attended his command, and oftentimes twixt Cambridge and that town hath in a minute borne him through the air, by composition twixt the fiend and him, comes now to claim the scholar for his due.
Draws the curtains.
Behold him here laid on his restless couch, his fatal chime prepared at his head, his chamber guarded with these sable slates, that by him stands that necromantic chair, which he makes his direful invocations, and binds the fiends that shall obey his will. Sit with a pleased eye until you know the comic end of our sad tragic show.
Exit the prologue. The chime goes, in which time Fable is oft seen to stare about him and hold up his hand.
What means the tolling of this fatal chime? Oh, what a trembling horror strikes my heart! My stiffened hair stands upright on my head, as do the bristles of a porcupine.
Enter Coreb, a spirit.
Fable, awake, for I will bear thee hence headlong to hell.
Why dost thou wake me? Coreb, is that thou?
'Tis I.
I know thee well. I hear the watchful dogs with hollow howling tell of thy approach. The lights burn dim, affrighted with thy presence, and this distempered and tempestuous night tells me the air is troubled with some devil.
Come, art thou ready?
Whither, or to what?
Why, scholar, this the hour my date expires. I must depart and come to claim my due.
What is thy due?
Fable, thyself.
Oh, let not darkness hear thee speak that word, lest that with forced hurry hence amain, and leave the world to look upon my woe. It overwhelm me with this globe of earth, and let a little sparrow with her bill take but so much as she can bear away, that every day, thus losing of my load, I may again in time yet hope to rise.
Didst thou not write thy name with thine own blood, and drewest the formal deed twixt thee and me, and is it not recorded now in hell?
Why, comest thou in this stern and horrid shape, not in familiar sort as thou wast wont?
Because the date of thy command is out, and I am master of thy skill and thee.
Coreb, thou angry and impatient spirit, I have earnest business for a private friend. Reserve me, spirit, until some farther time.
I will not, for the minds of all the earth.
Then let me rise, and ere I leave the world, dispatch some business that I have to do, and in the meantime repose thee in that chair.
Fabel, I will.
And Coreb sits down in the chair, the necromantic chair.
Oh, that this soul that cost so dear a price as the dear precious blood of her Redeemer, inspired with knowledge, should by that alone which makes a man so mean unto the powers even lead him down into the depth of hell, when men in their own pride strive to know more than man should know. For this alone God cast the angels down. The infinity of arts is like a sea, into which, when man will take in hand to sail further than reason, which should be his pilot, hath skill to guide him, losing once his compass, he falleth into such deep and dangerous whirlpools as he doth lose the very sight of heaven. The more he strives to come to quiet harbor, farther still he finds himself from land, man striving still to find the depth of evil, seeking to be a god becomes a devil.
Come, Fabel, hast thou done?
Yes, yes, come hither.
Fabel, I cannot.
Cannot? What ails your hollowness?
Good Fabel, help me.
Alas, where lies your grief? Sama quae vitae. Devil's very sick. I fear he'll die, for he looks very ill.
Darest thou deride the minister of darkness? In Lucifer's great name, Coreb conjures thee to set him free.
I will not, for the minds of all the earth, unless thou give me liberty to see 7 years more before thou seize on me.
Fabel, I give it thee.
Swear, damned fiend.
Unbind me, and by hell, I will not touch thee till 7 years from this hour be fully expired.
Enough. Come out.
A vengeance, take thy art. Live and convert all piety to evil. Never did man thus overreach the devil. No time on earth, like phaetonic flames, can have perpetual being. I'll return to my infernal mansion, but be sure, thy 7 years done, no trick shall make me tarry. But Coreb, thou to hell shalt Fabel carry.
Then thus between us two this variance ends, thou to thy fellow fiends, I to my friends.
And they exit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's how you do it. You don't sit there waiting for the demons to turn up. You spend 20 odd years making a magic chair. And you get you create a demon trap. I think he undersold himself with 7 years. Myself, I think that's the one failing there. But you know, maybe he's got another plan. You know, maybe this should be a series of tricking the demons. And this is the entire purpose of reading Doctor Faustus, is to read this scene. Sole purpose of visit.
Well, thank you for that, Ben.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the kind of scene that is infinitely disposable in this play, unless you've seen Doctor Faustus, because you know, the whole thing is full of so many spoofed or you know, variations on that narrative. Thoughts in comparison?
It's got a more softer tone to it, I think, than Faustus had. But I quite like the way the prologue introduced the narrative, and I quite like the pace at which the play is flowing. I think it has got a really good flow to it already. and it's quite compelling.
Yeah, because I mean, the prologue does exactly the same thing as the prologue in Faustus does. You know, introduce here is Fabel. This is his story. This is how here's his works, and then it skips straight to the end, and we literally do the scene we've just done.
Yes.
Sarah.
I did love as well in the prologue the way it makes the point of saying, oh, and if you go to Edmonton, you know, you'll find his monument and you'll meet people who remember him. Because of course, Marlowe took Faustus from a German chapbook, from a translation of a German chapbook, and there were loads of chapbooks in Germany in the sort of around the late 1580s that were claiming that Faust was a real guy, a real magician who had been in various different places around Heidelberg. And I assume that like people who had seen Faustus would also know about the chapbook, or would have read the translation of the chapbook. So that's quite a funny tie-in as well.
Yeah, you can imagine Merry Devil, Edmonton tours. Fable's here. This is the chair. This is the very chair. You can sit in it if you like. You have to pay money to get up.
Also about the prologue, although just the very beginning, I love how the first several lines are devoted to getting the audience to shut up.
Yeah.
And that would just be so funny to do in contemporary performance.
You know, some of our earliest fragments are shut up speeches from lost plays. You know, the Cambridge prologue is basically shut up. Nobody's allowed to talk. If you talk, the emperor is allowed to has given orders. You're allowed to. You die. You die. Everyone dies except kids. They're okay. Anyone neurodivergent who can't help making noise, they're fine as well. But everyone else, death, air. You know, and that's pretty much the oldest thing we've got in English. Does exactly the same thing, and you know, hundreds of years pass, and it's still the same opening gambit.
It's still necessary, though, man.
Yeah, Alan.
Just project the image of the mobile phone with an X through it.
Yeah, then there'll only be 3 going off during the show.
Yeah. You know, and is it the same chair? No.
Sorry, you wanted Faustus parallels and
well, no, I mean also just the scene in itself. You know, any thoughts from anyone else before we move forward?
I mean, obviously it's a comic mirroring of it, and I kind of I wish I'd read it ahead of time because I'd have played it a bit differently.
Because fables should really be play acting of is he saying
this is
let's just make sure the magic's working. Oh,
is it also? I know Faustus was very, very popular, you know, right up till the closing of the theatres. But isn't it a kind of a bit of a generational one-upmanship thing too? You know, there's the kind of theatre audience of 1608. They've sat through their bloody parents going, "Now Faustus, what a play! That's brilliant," you know, and all these kind of horrible law students who are 18 going, "Oh, okay."
Like that.
Yeah, and just going, you know, well, if I was Faustus, I'd have fixed it at the end. I'd have done something, you know, and this is the fix, isn't it? This is the objection.
See, mother, is the...
Yeah.
But it's theatre eating itself, isn't it? You know, it's repertory eating itself. You can imagine this working for people who went to the theatre quite a lot.
We do, however, have to move forward, I'm afraid. And we're going to read a relatively large chunk to get into this, because actually, to some degree, this opening might be a bit of a red herring into the way the play's about to go. So let's... So we'll read a few scenes. We'll let it get a little head of steam before we stop and chat about it. So in the first proper scene, shall we say, of the play, enter Sir Arthur Clare, Dorcas, his lady, Millicent, his daughter, young Harry Clare, the men booted, the gentle women in cloaks and safeguards, Blague, the merry host of the George comes in with them.
Welcome, good night, to the George at Waltham, my freehold, my tenements, goods and chattels. Madam, here's a room is the very Homer and Iliads of a lodging. It hath none of the four elements in it. I built it out of the centre, and I drink ne'ertheless sack. Welcome, my little waste of maidenheads. What? I serve the good Duke of Norfolk.
God a mercy, my good old Blague. That's a good seat here.
It is correspondent or so. There's not a Tartarian nor a carrier shall breathe upon your geldings. They have villainous rank feet, the rogues, and they shall not sweat in my linen. Knights and lords, too, have been drunk in my house, I thank the destinies.
Really, good sinful innkeeper, will that corruption thine officer to look well to my gelding? Ha! A pot of these washes.
You, St. Denis, your gelding shall walk without doors and cool his feet for his master's sake. By the body of St. George, I have an excellent intellect to go steal some venison. Now, when wast thou in the forest?
Away, you staleness and white broth. Come hither, sister, let me help you.
Mine host, is not Sir Richard Mountseat come yet, according to our appointment when we last dined here?
The night's not yet apparent. Marry, here's a forerunner that summons a parley, and faith he'll be here top and top gallant presently.
'Tis well, good mine host, go down and see breakfast be provided.
Knight, thy breath hath the force of a woman. It takes me down. I am for the baser element of the kitchen. I retire like a valiant soldier, face point blank to the foeman, or like a courtier that must not show his prince his posteriors, vanish to know my canvassados and my interrogatories, for I serve the good Duke of Norfolk.
And he exits, which is either a disappointment or a blessed relief.
How doth my lady? Art you not weary, madam? Come hither. I must talk in private with you. My daughter Millicent must not overhear.
Aye, whispering. Pray God it tend to my good. Strange fear sells my heart, usurps my blood.
You know our meeting with the knight Fantasy is to assure our daughter to his head.
'Tis without question.
2 tedious winters have passed o'er since first this couple loved each other and in passion, glued first their naked hands with more youthful moisture, just so long on my knowledge.
And what of this?
This morning, should my daughter lose her name, and to Majesty's house convey our arms, quartered within his scutcheon, the affiance made twixt him and her this morning should be sealed.
I know it should.
But there are crosses, why? Here's one in Waltham, another at the Abbey, and a third at Cheston. It is ominous to pass any of these without a paternoster. Crosses of love still thwart this marriage, whilst that we two, like spirits, walk in night about those stony and hard-hearted plots.
Oh God, what means my father?
But look you, wife, the riotous old knight hath overrun his annual revenue, keeping jolly Christmas all evening. The nostrils of his chimney are still stuffed with smoke more changeable than cane tobacco. His hawks devour his fattest hogs, while Simple, his leanest cur, eats his hound's carrion. Besides, I heard of late, his younger brother, a turkey merchant, has sore sucked the night by means of some great losses on the sea, that you conceive me before gods, all's naught. His seat is weak. Thus, each thing rightly scanned will set light, wife, shortly of his land.
Treason to my heart's truest sovereign. How soon is love smothered in foggy gain?
But how shall we prevent this dangerous match?
I have a plot, trick. This it is. Under this cover, I'll break off the match. I'll tell the knight now my mind is changed, marrying my daughter, for I intend to send her unto Cheston Nunnery.
Oh, me accursed.
There to become a most religious nun,
I'll first be buried quick.
to spend her beauty in most private prayers.
I'll sooner be a sinner in forsaking mother and father.
How dost thou like my plot?
exceeding well. But is it your intent she shall continue there?
Continue there? Ha! That were a jest. You know a virgin may continue there for 12 months and a day on trial. There shall my daughter sojourn some 3 months, and in meantime I'll compass a fair match twixt youthful Jerningham, the lusty heir of Sir Ralph Jerningham, dwelling in the forest. I think they'll both come hither with Mountsey.
Your care argues the love of you bear our child. I will subscribe to anything you'll have me.
And exits Arthur and Dorcas.
You will subscribe to it. Good, good, 'tis well. Love hath 2 chairs of state, heaven and hell. My dear Munchen say, thou my death shalt rue, ere to thy heart Millicent prove untrue.
And she exits. Enter, as we go into effectively another scene, enter Blague.
Hustlers, you knaves and commanders, take the horses of the knights and competitors. Your honorable hulks have put into harbor. They'll take in fresh water here, and I have provided clean chamber pots. Via, they come.
Enter Sir Richard Mounchensey, Sir Ralph Jerningham, young Frank Jerningham, Raymond Mounchensey, Peter Fabel, and Bilbo.
The destinies be most neat chamberlains to these swaggering Puritans, knights of the subsidy.
God of mercy, good mine host.
Thanks, good host Blague.
Room for my case of pistols that have Greek and Latin bullets in them. Let me cling to your flanks, my noble Gibraltars, and blow wind in your calves to make them swell bigger. Ha! I'll caper in mine own fee simple. Away with punctilios and orthography. I serve the good Duke of Norfolk.
Titere tu patulae recubans sub tegmine fagi. Truly, mine host, Bilbo, though he be somewhat out of fashion, will be your only blade still. I have a villainous sharp stomach to slice a breakfast.
Thou shalt have it, without any more discontinuance, release, or returnment. What, we know our terms of hunting and the sea card.
And do you serve the good Duke of Norfolk still?
Still and still and still, my soldier of St. Quentin's. Come, follow me. I have Charles Wayne below in a butt of sack. 'Twill glister like your crabfish.
You have fine scholar-like terms. Your Cooper's Dictionary is your only book to study in a cellar. A man should find very strange words in it. Come, my host, let's serve the good Duke of Norfolk.
And still and still and still, me boy, I'll serve the good Duke of Norfolk. Yay!
Yes, and they exit. Enter Sir Arthur, Clare, Harry, Clare, and Millicent.
Good Sir Arthur Clare.
What gentleman is that? I know him not.
'Tis Master Fabel, sir, a Cambridge scholar, my son's dear friend.
Sir, I entreat you know me.
Command me, sir. I am affected to you for your Mounchensey's sake.
That's for him. I'll not respect whether he sink or swim. A word in private, Sir Ralph Jerningham.
Methinks your father looks strangely on me. Say, love, why are you sad?
I'm not sweet. Passion is strong when woe with woe doth meet.
Show us in to breakfast. After, we'll conclude the cause of this our coming. In and feed, and let that usher a more serious deed.
And they either exit or move slightly further away.
Whilst you desire his grief, my heart shall bleed.
And she possibly exits as well. Frank? I'm not giving out a Frank.
You be frank.
I'll be Frank. Oh no, Alexandra. Alexandra be Frank. I'll be Shirley, you be Frank.
Yeah. Raymond Mountcheney, come be frolic, friend. This is the day thou hast expected long.
Pray God, dear Harry Clare, it proves so happy.
There's naught can alter it. Be merry, lad.
There's naught shall alter it. Be lively, Raymond. Stand any opposition against thy hope, art shall confront it with her largest scope.
And they exit except for Fabel, who is either left alone or there's some other business to get him on and off stage.
Good old Mountchenny, is thy hap so ill that for thy bounty and thy royal parts thy kind alliance should be held in scorn? And after all these promises, my Clare refused to give his daughter to thy son, only because thy revenues cannot reach to make her dowage of so rich a jointure as can the heir of wealthy Jerningham. And therefore is the false fox now in hand to strike a match betwixt her and the other, and the old greybeards now are close together, plotting it in the garden. Just even so. Raymond, Mountchenny boy, have thou and I thus long at Cambridge read the liberal arts, the metaphysics, magic, and those parts of the most secret deep philosophy? Have I so many melancholy nights watched on the top of Peterhouse highest tower, and come back unto our native home for want of skill to lose the wench thou lovest? I'll first hang Enfield in such rings of mist as never rose from any dampish fen. I'll make the brined sea to rise at Ware, and drown the marshes unto Stratford Bridge. I'll drive the deer from Waltham in their walks, and scatter them like sheep in every field. He may perhaps be crossed, but if we be, he shall cross the devil that but crosses me.
Enter Raymond and young Jerningham.
But here comes Raymond, disconsolate and sad, and here's the gallant that must have the wench.
I prithee, Raymond, leave these solemn dumps, revive thy spirits. Thou that before hast been more watchful than the day-proclaiming cock, as sportive as a kid, as frank and merry as mirth itself. If aught in me made thy content procure, it is thine own, thou mayst thyself assure.
Ah, Jerningham, if any but thyself had spoke that word, it would have come as cold as the bleak northern winds upon thy face of winter. From thee they have some power upon my blood, yet being from thee, had but that hollow sound come from the lips of any living man, it might have won the credit of mine ear. From thee it cannot.
If I understand thee, I am a villain. What? Dost thou speak in parables to thy friend?
And here, possibly enter young Harry Clare. He might have entered with everyone at the top of the scene.
Come, boy, and make me the same droning love, troubled with stitches and the cough of the lungs. Thou wept his eyes out when he was a child, and ever since hath shot at hoodman blind. Make her leap, caper, jerk, and laugh, and sing, and play me horse tricks. Make Cupid wanton as his mother's dove. But in this sort, boy, I would have thee love.
Why, how now, madcap? What, my lusty Frank, so near a wife, and will not tell your friend? But you will to this gear in hugger-mugger? Art thou turned miser, rascal, in thy loves?
Who? I? Blood, what should all you see in me that I should look like a married man? Huh? Am I bald? Are my legs too little for my hose? If I feel anything in my forehead, I'm a villain. Do I wear a nightcap? Do I bend in the hams? What dost thou see in me that I should be toward marriage, huh?
What? Thou married? Let me look upon thee, rogue, who's given this out of thee. How camest thou into this ill name? What company hast thou been in, rascal?
You are the man, sir, must have Millicent. The match is making in the garden now. Her jointure is agreed on, and the old men, your fathers, mean to launch their busy bags. In the meantime, to thrust Mountchenny off, for colour of this new intended match. Fair Millicent to Cheston must be sent, to take the approbation for a nun. Now look upon me, lad, the match is done.
Raymond Mountchenny, now I touch thy grief with the true feelings of a zealous friend. And as for fair and beauteous Millicent, with my vain breath I will not seek to slubber her angel-like perfections, but thou know'st that Essex hath the saint that I adore. Where'er didst meet me that we two were jovial, but like a wag thou hast not laughed at me, and with regardless jesting mocked my love. How many a sad and weary summer night my sighs have drunk the dew from off the earth, and I have taught the nightingale to wake, and from the meadows sprung the early lark, an hour before she should have listened to sing. I have loaded the poor minutes with my moans, that I have made the heavy, slow-paced hours to hang like heavy clogs upon the day. But, dear Mancini, had not my affection seized on the beauty of another dame, before I'd wrong the chase and leave me the love of one so worthy and so true a friend, I will abjure both beauty and her sight, and will in love become a counterfeit.
Dear Jenningham, thou hast begot my life, and from the mouth of hell where now I sat, I feel my spirit rebound against the stars. Thou hast conquered me, dear friend, in my free soul. Ne'er time nor death can by their power control.
Frank Jerningham, thou art a gallant boy. Were he not my pupil, I would say he were as fine a mettled gentleman, of as free spirit and of as fine a temper as is in England. And he is a man that very richly may deserve thy love. But, noble Clare, this while of our discourse, what may Mount Cheney's honour to thyself exact upon the measure of thy grace?
Raymond Mount Cheney, I would have thee known, he does not breathe this air whose love I cherish, and whose soul I love more than Mount Cheney's. Nor ever in my life to see the man whom, for his wit and many virtuous parts, I think more worthy of my sister's love. But since the matter goes on to this pass, I must not seem to cross my father's will. But when thou list to visit her by night, my house, my horse is saddled, and the stable door stands ready for thee. Use them at thy pleasure. In honest marriage, wed her frankly, boy, and if thou gettest her, lad, God give thee joy.
And careaway, let fate my fall pretend, back with the favours of so true a friend.
Let us alone to bustle for the set, for age and craft with wit and art have met. I'll make my spirits to dance such nightly jigs along the way, twixt this and Tottenham Cross, the carriers' jades shall cast their heavy packs, and the strong hedges scarce shall keep them in. The milkmaids' cuts shall turn the wenches off, and lay their dossers tumbling in the dust. The frank and merry London prentices that come for cream and lusty country cheer shall lose their way, and scrambling in the dishes all night shall whoop and halloo, cry and call, yet none to other find the way at all.
Pursue the project, scholar. What we can do to help endeavour, join our lives there too.
And there we will pause. So yes, it's quite a different play in tone and theme. We've got this thwarted love subplot or plot going on. I don't even think we can call it a subplot. It's the plot. But I think let's start where I think we all want to start. Let's talk about the host. Let's talk about that use of language. I mean, it's fascinating what's going on there. And this, serving the good the Duke of Norfolk.
It took me a while to realize that must be a song.
He's just this never-ending joviality, but where it's bordering on nonsense. Stephen, I think you're wanting to leap in.
Well, two things. One, am I right in thinking Blague just means joke? I got that wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it reminds me of. It reminds me of lots of things. It reminds me of Simon Eyre in The Shoemaker's Holiday. There's this kind of sort of virtuoso, improvisatory kind of extravagance, and it's a peculiar contrast in terms of rhetoric, because the other character's rhetoric is so dull. It's equally as convoluted, and it goes on for far longer. And it's a really strange kind of setup. We start off with a really, really kind of tight prologue and a really tight opening scene, and then it just seems to, become a triple album from the 1970s. And there's maybe we've got kind of some good tunes from Blague in there, and the rest of it is this kind of noodling, you know, sort of endless kind of guitar solos.
It's the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. Blague just leaps off the page, and then it takes you a while to figure out what the plot is, even though actually the plot is quite straightforward. Sarah,
the convolutedness. I actually thought it was quite sprightly convolutedness, and it actually, to me, it kind of prefigured what comes later. It reminded me a lot in terms of the rhythm of it and the way the characters talk to each other of, you know, post 1660 restoration comedy, and I found it fascinating for that reason, because I can sort of pick up little. It's like this is the prototype for it. This is where it starts to change slightly. You know, that the style is morphing slightly into something else.
Well,
we've got this. The opening is really a red herring. It really is to the rest of the play, and it's doing really interesting things. Liza.
Stephen may have been going to say this, I don't know, but that shift in tone is what you get when you get to city comedy. You get, rather than kings and gods, you get Londoners who just talk to each other. My feeling is there are enough. Blague is great, but he's not the only tavern host who talks like this in plays of this period, and there must have been hosts who speak in surreal allusions must have been a thing. There must have been someone, I don't know, there must have been someone who started all this off. But you know, from Chaucer onwards, hosts being kind of merry and manic are basically a thing. Stephen, what were you going to say?
Well, kind of not really speaking to your point, but something I meant to say before. I don't know if anyone knows the play Night of the Burning Pestle.
Yes.
But, yeah, I love it. I love it.
Because there's a couple of scenes in that are set in Waltham, and it's a Blackfriars play, and it's the year before, and supposedly it's a dreadful failure. But we're back to this kind of notion of little sort of Easter eggs for an audience at the time, if you like. In that play, it's completely the in-host is the straight man, and this guy turns up who thinks he's in Don Quixote, basically. He's sort of playing this knight errant, and then all these knights errant turn up with very, very kind of extravagant sort of "I'm a knight, have you seen the Duke of Norfolk" stuff. So it could be just completely a coincidence, you know. It's a main road out of London or whatever. But you know, the next scene we're in Waltham, and it's the same company, I think.
And they're all covered. They're primarily interested in the opening with they've come in. They're in the boots. They want to clean the excrement off their shoes, and they're not impressed with the rushes on the floor. Dan.
It might be worth noting that that this text has been identified as severely abridged, so probably for performance. So that might account for the fact that the prologue or should the first scene seems like a red herring because maybe there was more stuff that we don't know about.
It feels like an Easter egg to me. Let's try not to lead the witnesses too much in how we unpack the text at this stage. Alan.
Just a thought, given the company that you suggested to put this on, is this the right sort of time for Kim to blame the landlord?
No.
Armin, possibly.
Yeah.
I was thinking this read like an Armin part.
But yeah, in terms of today, the question is, how do we find a route into the way the language is coming across? Because it's sort of almost, it's not contemporary slang, but it's very much in its moment, and it's trying to connect it with our moment, where when we're talking about kings and people talking in very formal style, it's quite easy to click into that because they're already unnatural and strange. Whereas this is supposed to sound a bit more like, I'm loving the fact that you've got they're talking about the nunnery, going to the nunnery, and the nunneries function on a sort of Amazon Prime basis. You know, you can go for a year and a day, and if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe, and it's fine. And so there are lots of little details. It's just there is so much stuff coming at us, and because all of these scenes, a lot of these exits and entrances in this version are a bit spurious. You know, there's not necessarily people exiting, but they're on another side of the room, not listening to the conversation. So there's this flow going on of action that, you know, I love this sort of overhearing. You know, I'm wondering whether Sir Arthur, doing these asides, isn't whispering. He's going, now, we must be very quiet over here when we plot about our daughter. And, you know, I wonder about that.
I thought it might be very funny if he was quite deaf.
Yeah.
Oh, that is very quiet, is what.
Yeah, shush.
But I'm reminded of what Stephen said about the opening scene being perhaps a joke against their parents' tastes, but for a younger audience. Because again, it's a very much a generational thing set up here.
Right, we've got one little scene left to look at, but Sarah, very quickly jump in.
No, just off the back of what Aliki was saying there, yeah, that scene with Sir Arthur and Dorcas and then Millicent, like overhearing their conversation, and she's like, "Oh God, what means my father?" And you can just see the eye rolls as she speaks. It's like there's a beautiful. You could play that beautifully as a kind of like, you know, older teenager, like, "Oh my God, my parents are just so embarrassing, and they're coming up with all this shit."
And we get a similar thing with Frank and Raymond, and you know, and they're all sort of go, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not gonna, there's terrible things." Oh no, Harry saying, "Well, I can't help you openly, but we can arrange something, and everything will be fine." And you know, it's all very merry and jolly, but connecting it and getting it across the audience is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think it's doable. Okay, we've got one more little short scene to look at with some different characters. Enter Banks, Sir John, and Smug.
Take me with you, good Sir John. A plague on thee, Smug, and thou touchest liquor, thou art foundered straight. What? Are your brains always watermills? Must they ever run round?
Thanks. Your ale is as a Philistine fox. Nouns, there's fire in the tail on't. You're a rogue to charge us with mugs in the rearward. Plague of this wind. Oh, tickles our catastrophe.
Neighbour Bags of Waltham and Goodman Smug, the honest smith of Edmonton, as I dwell betwixt you both at Enfield, I know the taste of both your alehouses. They are good both, smart both. Grass and hay. We are all mortal. Let's live till we die and be merry, and there's an end.
Well said, Sir John. You are of the same humour still. And doth the water run the same way still, boy?
Vulcan was a rogue to him, Sir John. Lock, lock, lock fast, Sir John. No, Sir John. I'll one of these years, when it shall please the goddess and the destinies, be drunk in your company. That's all now. God send us health. Shall I swear I love you?
No oaths, good neighbour Smug. We'll wet our lips together and hug, carouse in private, and elevate the heart and the liver and the lights. Mark you me within us for grass and hay. We are all mortal. Let's live till we die and be merry, and there's an end.
But to our former motion about stealing some venison, whither we go?
Into the forest, neighbour Banks, into Brian's Walk, the mad keeper.
Lord, I'll tickle your keeper!
I' faith, thou art always drunk when we have need of thee.
Need of me? Heart, you have need of me always. Well, there's an iron in an anvil.
Master Parson, may the smith go, think you, being in this taken?
Go. I'll go, in spite of all the bells in Waltham.
The question is good, neighbour Banks. Let me see. The moon shines tonight. There's not a narrow bridge betwixt this and the forest. His brain may be settled a night. He may go, neighbour Banks. Now, we want none but the company of mine host Blague of the George at Waltham. If he were here, our concert were full. Look, where comes my good host, the Duke of Norfolk's man? And how? Grass and hay, we are not yet mortal. Let us live till we die and be merry, and there's an end.
Ah, my Castilian dialogues! And art thou in breath still, boy? Miller, does the match hold? Smith, I see by thine eyes thou hast been reading a little Geneva print. But wend we merrily to the forest to steal some of the king's deer? Yeah, I'll meet you at the time appointed. Away, I have knights and colonels at my house, and I must tend the Hungarians. If we be scared in the forest, we'll meet at the church porch at Enfield. Is correspondent?
'Tis well, but how, if any of us should be taken?
He shall have ransom, by my sword.
Tush, the knave keepers are my bona socias and my pensioners. 9 o'clock, be valiant, my little gogmagogs. I'll fence with all the justices in Hertfordshire. I'll have a buck till I die. I'll slay a doe while I live. Hold your bow straight and ready. I serve the good Duke of Norfolk.
Oh, rare woohoo, boy!
Peace, neighbour Smug. You see this boor of the country, an illiterate boor, and yet the citizen of good fellows. Come, let's provide. Grass and hay, we are not yet all mortal. We'll live till we die and be merry, and there's an end. Come, Smug.
Good night, Waltham. Woohoo!
Hey!
And they exit, and ladies and gentlemen, we have met the B-plot, and what a fab sequence there. You know, shall I swear I love you? And I just love the idea of problem of wind. Oh, it tickles our catastrophe. Wow, I'm having that. That's motion of the possibility of a follow through. I feel there's I'm not sure about precisely the gag with Sir John. I love the fact that he just always ends with "and there's an end." I really like that. And what kind of drunk he is? Is he drunk? Is he talking to the audience at the very end there? When he says "peace, neighbour Smug," you see this boar. Is that little bit there is almost like he's just describing Smug there.
It feels like it's very right for audience interaction, precisely because he has this repeated catchphrase, the way the innkeeper does. That you know, I was ready to chip in. Live till we die and be merry, and there's an end.
There's
fast show quality, isn't it, Tamara?
There's singing, there's audience interaction. There is so much to unpack with Sir John.
Stephen,
I felt that Smug's Goodnight Waltham, the final Goodnight Waltham, was definitely to the audience.
Yes, thank you and good night.
Good night from me.
We're here all week.
Yes. Stephen.
The audience will have heard I'll tickle your catastrophe before in a play. Many of the scenes are set in Eastcheap.
Is it from earlier or after?
Earlier.
Well, never mind.
Quack, quack.
I tried.
No, that's me. I'm quacking myself.
There's yeah, I mean, again, risking the duck. There is a play set in Windsor that has some intertexts with Blague's dialogue.
Yeah, we are all deeply aware of this problem.
But yes,
and
but
here
if
Sir John problem.
I was gonna say, and here I was trying so hard not to bring up the Sir John thing.
Yeah.
But okay.
Okay, let's pull back from that. But there is an interesting question because we've had this before in another play, where a play there's an overall structure to it, but where it's also seemed to be deliberately riffing on other plays almost as a series of set pieces. And I'm starting to wonder if actually that's what's going on here. We've had an opening spoof. We're having potentially another riff on other plays. And maybe actually this is a mixtape of other things, maybe material that we don't have. Alexandra?
That is exactly what I was going to ask, because the scene with Frank, the scene in the middle with the, why are you so sad? Well, because you're going to marry my girlfriend. No, man, you can have her. Okay, then. Sounds also like the core plot of some great tragedy being twisted and resolved instead of carried through in exactly the same way as we had, that opening scene from Faustus. And now that we're seeing resonances in the next scene, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Do we know anything about whether this is a sort of greatest hits twisted thing?
I have no knowledge of, but at the moment that feels like a very plausible analogue for where we're going. And maybe we'll have more data later on. We've still got 2/3 of the play. Alan?
Yeah, we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago about a similar sort of exercise, and we almost came up with the conclusion it was the end of season. They'd done a rep season, and let's pastiche all the best bits and flog a few more tickets without having to actually spend any more money on rehearsal or props or anything else.
They're all playing the parts that they play elsewhere, and it's a good season closer if you're about to go on tour. Or here's our best bits, because there's nothing like doing a very serious play. By the end of the run, you go, now, if I just change this, it's hilarious. And it's something that, always seems to happen in dressing rooms, is you start mocking the very serious play that you're in and taking it apart and destroying it. And that creates all sorts of interesting routes and possibilities. We're very much into extra time, so I'm not going to go around the whole room again, but if you've got any other thoughts so far, thoughts about either play or this scene or anything at all.
I think the play has a tremendous amount of humour to it. It's lovable in the way the play that we had with the cow. I can't remember the name of the title, but there was one play that had with the cow in the court, and there was a lot of litigation about the cow.
No cow!
No cow!
More cow.
So it reminds me of that one.
Anyone else wants to throw into the mix? I say, apart from, yes, there's a certain clicking into the dialogue and what the dialogue is doing. I'm not. There was a certain impenetrability, but I think that's solvable with rehearsal. I think, and context and costume and
physicality as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I was playing Banks there, like the designated driver, but it would come across much better if everyone was on stage was like literally falling around with their beers, and he was just standing there like.
Yeah, it's that question of what kind of drunks or are they, or what state, what level have they reached?
The whole of everything post the Faustus scene has a lot to be unpacked in it. I mean, the illusions are very dense, both the topical and the play illusions. I mean, there is a vast amount in it that you just get a hint of.
And that's the thing, is if this play is constantly in conversation with texts that we haven't read or just do not exist, that's big. We've just read Faustus, so that opening made perfect sense. How much sense would that opening have made if you hadn't seen Faustus? And therefore, how much does some of these other scenes make sense if you haven't seen other plays that might be available? Dan, I think, wanted to say something.
I brought up the notion that this was an abridged text because there are, as people have seen already, I think it's already come up with entrances and exits. There's going to be a number of other ones where it's really unclear. as well as misassigned speech prefixes. That is to say that, unfortunately, this being the only, there's 5 quartos of this, but unfortunately this being the only version of this text, there is a lot of room really to play around with those kinds of things, as in we don't necessarily need to follow who has entered or who's exited because the text says so, because of the fact that this was based on a text that it has incomplete information on it.
Well, I say at the moment I'm not having a fundamental problem with I'm not going, there feels like a massive bit missing here yet. I'm not feeling anything like that so far.
There will be a couple in the next tomorrow.
But then we could argue the same thing about Faustus, because we're deliberately reading it in the order of what it was printed for because I like that. Alan,
I'm thinking quite a bit of the bits that have been excised could well be that where you've got the comic routines going on, it's basically, okay, this is the bullet points, and the comic would go on for as long as he felt he could get away with it without collecting whatever rotten fruit the audience had been amassing. Just bust while ready.
It feels quite well constructed, you see, though. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And the further we go in time, I'm always slightly less. I question how much license you get as the decades pass. Sorry, Liza.
Oh, not at all. Just saying pretty much the same thing, that often in plays you get where there's space for clowning and ad-libbing, you get little indicators of that. You get little et ceteras or songs written in, or stage directions for physical business, sometimes if you're lucky. And while clowns are clowns and will always take liberties, the comedy here does feel really well written. There's enough verbal dancing that I think ad-libbing might detract from it.
Valentina?
No, I just want to say that, I know we all recognize or like some of the allusions to other plays, but I've seen a version of this done in Italy in Italian years ago, and it wasn't in a season or anything, and it worked really well on its own. It was just without having a panoramic view of what was going on in other theaters at that time.
Reassuring. Yeah, Tamara.
Well, following up on that, I wonder if that's just because, today we would call it tropes, recognizable things that, you expect it to go one way, and then like we said, oh wait, you don't want me to marry your girlfriend. Okay. People actually talk to each other and suddenly it's inverted. So yeah, today we would call it tropes, and we would also be amused if people invert our expectations in that way in film or theatre. So I reckon that's why it works by itself.
Yeah, and you don't have to have seen the Doctor Faustus to be aware of magicians being dragged to hell.
Sarah.
Changing the subject entirely. I see by thy eyes thou hast been reading a little Geneva print. That's a gin joke, right? That has to be a gin joke.
Yes.
Is that are there versions of that elsewhere, or is that a new one? Because I just love that, and I'm going to start using it.
I was taking it as a reference to the Geneva Bible, and that the guy was squinting.
Okay. I thought when I first saw it, I said, yeah, here we go. It's a Geneva Bible joke. But then I thought, no, it isn't. It's between the two. It's.
I think.
Yeah, it's riffing.
You claim you're reading the Bible, but actually you're knocking back the gin.
The gin.
I'm pretty sure that it is gin, because certainly gin was called Geneva in this period, because I've got it in shipping lists. Medical supplies.
We thought about gin, and it was used specifically to have the pun on gin drinking there. And I looked it up in OED, and apparently that was a usage of it. I think that you're right. I think it's the reference to both Gin and Geneva.
Well, it's sort of got to work in conjunction because of you know, that if you're referring to drinking, but if it looks like he's squinting, then it, you know, he's squinting because he's drunk, not because he's been reading, and it is playing with all the things. I'm wondering about the Liza was saying the Duke of Norfolk's man being a song, but I'm wondering whether there's also, you know, he is literally the Duke of Norfolk. He may be singing that, but whether is there a connection with the Duke of Norfolk and Waltham? Is there some reference that we're not getting there, which could be elucidated upon? Alan, I see a hand.
I'm just wondering, it's one of the most popular pub names in East Anglia is the Marquis of Granby. And these were houses that were set up by old soldiers with a bounty from their commander. And I'm just wondering whether the Duke of Norfolk man might be a similar setup. An old soldier who's been pensioned off with, you know, the gift of a pub.
Yeah, maybe. I'm saying out there because I don't know if we have any answers. Aliki.
I'm sorry, it only just occurred to me as well that there's a potential very rude pun there, and that's what's going on.
Elucidate.
Yeah, we like, for goodness sake, we mostly do fart jokes.
The Duke of Norfolk!
Oh, thank you.
Norfolk and good.
Yeah, that had completely gone past me.
Yeah, no, I hadn't picked that one up at all either.
It's the purity of our souls.
Yes.
And how are you separating that?
Okay. Any final thoughts before I close the session, then, people? Anyone want to leap in before I close this descent into vice that's clearly going on here? Okay, thank you very much to all the readers. We have worked our way through the 8 texts of Dr. Faustus. We are about a third of the way, maybe slightly less actually, into Merry Devil of Edmonton. We are going to finish that tomorrow at a reasonable old lick. We're cramming quite a lot in this week, but all that remains is to thank all the readers for reading the play and for their comments, and goodbye.
Bye.